Hey y'all, how we doing? We today are gonna do a couple SohCahToa practice problems here. So this first one here gives us a angle of 72 degrees, a side length here of 6, and an unknown over here of x. We're not concerned with this side over here. So the first thing that I like to do with these is to identify which sides we're working with. So in this case, the angle is 72. This is adjacent to the 72. My hypotenuse is the one over here that is across from the right angle. So we are using A and H. I always like to write that, A and H. So when we look at SohCahToa, notice the C has the A and the H right here. So that tells us we're using cosine. I always do the sine, cosine, tangent of an angle. So we're going to write cosine of 72 because that is our angle that we're working with. And then I set it equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So I get cosine of 72 is the adjacent side is 6 and the hypotenuse is x. So in this case, this might be the more complicated one that we have to deal with, but what I typically like to do is when I'm solving for x here, put that over 1. And maybe I will pause one moment. And I just rewrote that a little bit more so it's more clear. So when I have cosine of 72 over 1 is 6 over x, I think it makes it a little bit easier for us to solve for x because we can do something that you should be pretty used to, which is cross multiplying. Notice if I do that, I get x times the cosine of 72 is equal to 6 times 1, which is 6. And then from there, cosine of 72 is something that we could plug into our calculator. It's a number. So we can divide by cosine of 72, divide by cosine of 72. It cancels here, and it gives me x equals 6 over cosine of 72. And then from there, as long as we are in the correct mode on our calculators, typically there's two modes, a radian mode and a degree mode. Since we're working with degrees here, we want to make sure we're in degree mode. You just type this in your calculator, 6 divided by cosine of 72. And if you do that, you should get 19.416. I typically like to round to 3 decimals because that's kind of a standard way of doing things, particularly in the AP curriculum. So I like to stick with rounded to 3 decimals. So that's our answer right there. Hopefully you're okay with that. Let's scroll down and do this next one. So here, notice it looks pretty similar to the previous one, except for the 6 and the x are switched, and we have a little bit different angle. Here I had an x and a 6. Here I get a 6 and an x. So I'll go through the whole process. We are going to label our sides. Here's the hypotenuse. This is the angle we're working off of. X is adjacent to it. If we were working with this side up here, then that would be opposite of the 73, and I would use one of the other functions. So remember it's SohCahToa, so I'm using adjacent and hypotenuse, so we're going to use cosine. I like to write that A and H, arrow, cosine. And then when I set this up, I always take the sine, cosine, or tangent of an angle. So the cosine of 73 is equal to what is adjacent. Well, I'll write it A over H. So now I'll write it out with numbers. Cosine of 73 is equal to what is the adjacent in this case? It's x. And then we're dividing by the hypotenuse, which is 6. And this one's a little bit easier to solve. We just multiply by 6 on both sides. They will cancel here, and then give me that 6 cosine of 73 is equal to my x. And again, make sure we're in degree mode, and just type in 6 cosine of 73 into your calculator, hit enter, and you should get that x is equal to 1.754. Again, 3 decimals like in the previous one. I guess I should say one thing about both these problems. We should always take a look at what we get and see if it sort of makes sense. So 1.754, that's about 2. Does it make sense if I've got this steep angle and a length of 6 here to have something that's about 2? Yeah, it does. It wouldn't make sense if I had something that was bigger than 6 because the hypotenuse is going to be the biggest side. Come up here. Given that this one is 6, does it make sense that that thing is about 19 or 20? Yeah, it sort of does, right? It's clearly a lot longer than the 6, right? So that 19 or 20 makes some sense. So hopefully this helps you as you're doing these types of problems. Remember, put it over 1, cross multiply. I think that's the easiest way to do it. And if they happen to work out like this, then hopefully that goes a little quicker for you. Thank you. See ya.